Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, a podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, Jason Byerlotzer, principal trombonist of the Hawaii Symphony and Royal Hawaiian Band. My name is Sebastian Vera, and I'm joined as always by Nick Schwartz. Nick, would you like to time travel with me?
Well, it depends. Am I the captain or am I the passenger?
Let's call you a first mate. How's that?
Aye, Captain.
Sure. I'd like to take you back to a simpler time where, we had live concerts every night. People went out to brunch regularly.
Mm-hmm.
You could hug your friends if you wanted to. And there was just this mysterious illness on another continent you sometimes heard about. So this interview was actually the second interview we did. It's from February when I had the privilege of being in Hawaii. So this was before everything. And so we kind of pushed it back because we wanted to have a few interviews that were topical to all of the mini events that were happening. But this was a really awesome talk. We always say that, but some things ended up being pretty prescient. First of all, for me, it was really cool because it was the first time I got to be in the same room with someone so far on this podcast.
It's only happened twice. Paul Pollard, I was in the room with him, and you were in the room with Jason.
In the future, of course, we'll be able to do a lot of those. There's something about being able to make eye contact with someone.
I don't know what you're talking about. I always looked like Dwight Schrute right in the forehead.
Right. So, yeah, I feel like I identify a lot with Jason, and certain things he brought up really resonated with me as far as how he's built his career. And like he says, he has kind of a diversified portfolio, and he's been in a lot of different groups, and he plays in a lot of different groups now. But the crazy part about this interview and the most interesting part is the fact that you want to say?
Well, yeah, I think the interesting thing about Jason is, number one is he's not just a survivor, but a thriver. He always seems to figure out how to make a good situation out of what might seem impossible circumstances. But also the obvious thing is that he was in so many orchestras that have folded. That's an unfortunate status that he has, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we added up to be more or less 4 or 5, which is just an insane bout of bad luck. And he goes into detail. And the cool thing is he gets a lot of very unique perspective by going through that on the state of orchestras and how an unforeseen event can really hurt an orchestra. And it's crazy how we were talking about unforeseen world events that could affect the economy right before this crazy thing happened. So
yeah, not even about a month later, everything came to a screeching halt. So we obviously didn't know that was going to happen when we talked to Jason, but here we are with unforeseen events affecting arts organizations the world over.
So it's not too late to sign up for the free online trombone retreat, July 6th through 12th, unless you're listening to this in the distant future. Then I have some questions. Please email me. But go to tromboneretreat.com. We realized we forgot to mention our website in the last podcast, but
whoops-a-daisies.
I'm sure you've heard it 8 million times by now, or know how to use the Google machine.
All right, enjoy this interview with Jason Byerlotzer.
Almost going. Well, we gotta be across from each other. Right?
Yeah, this is fine. Welcome to Crosstalk.
Yeah.
All right, so here we are in Hawaii.
I'm not in Hawaii.
You're not in Hawaii? Well, tough for you. How cold is it in New York right now?
It's actually not bad. It's like 58 degrees. That would be like a crisis in Hawaii, I'm pretty sure.
A week or two ago, it was what we think of as pretty cold here, where it'd be in the 60s, like high 60s, like at night or something, and it's pretty nuts. It feels quite cold.
People were freaking out.
Yeah.
Hashtag soup weather.
Oh yeah, definitely want some warming soup when it gets down to in the 60s here.
Well, yeah, so I've been lucky enough to find a quick time to escape Pittsburgh February weather and come to Hawaii. Newsflash, Hawaii is still paradise. It's kind of ridiculous.
It's really the Akron of the Pacific.
Hey, shout out to Akron. It's a rubber capital of the world. Go Zips. Anyways, so yeah, I've been here getting to do master classes at University of Hawaii with the Hawaii Youth Orchestra and the Punahou School, which I keep pronouncing wrong, which is this incredible, it seems like a college. It's where Barack Obama went to private school. Incredible facility. It's been around for like 100 years or longer. And all thanks to Jason for helping set this up. And so we thought it'd be awesome to talk to Jason about this crazy, unique life he has on this island, playing the trombone for a living, and want to walk through your career and how you got here and how you ended up here. And we're in his beautiful condo right now in this theater overlooking the city. It's very relaxing. I'm somewhat tan finally. It'll go away in like 24 hours, I'm sure. But thanks for sitting down.
Well, thanks for coming to Hawaii. We're happy you're in town. At all those places you mentioned, we really, I think a lot of times I didn't appreciate this until I moved here, just how far away from everything else Hawaii is. I mean, I think if you haven't gone to Hawaii before, you might think like, oh, there's California and it's just a little bit further out in the Pacific, but it's way out here. Like I think from the West Coast, from LA or San Francisco, you're 5 hours on a plane to Hawaii. So we're way out in the middle of the Pacific. And we love it when someone comes and visits us and shares their trombone knowledge or their musical knowledge with the community here. A lot of times our students don't get to go to other cities or take master classes or anything like that. So when someone comes here, it's great. So we're really happy to host you and really happy you could go work with all our students here.
Nick, I have an idea.
Yes.
Trombone Retreat Hawaii.
I think that's going to be a hard sell. I don't know.
Okay, so you're from Texas originally.
Yes.
As am I.
Yeah.
You're from Midland. You're
Midland,
from
Texas. Yeah.
West Texas.
Yeah, my family moved around a lot, but lived in Texas for the longest time. So that's definitely where those Texas high school band programs. That's definitely part of my musical upbringing. I was very fortunate enough to go to some schools that had really good programs, and then have really good private teachers in the cities I lived in. And that's what gave me my foundation to be able to play trombone as a professional. And totally thankful for the people that were there to give that to me.
I always call it the Texas band machine because it's just like, it's very normal to have lessons from 5th, 6th grade on, and it's very competitive. It's a high level. There's a lot of money tends to be in the band programs. It just produces so many good players, it seems like. I mean, patting ourselves on the back.
You might not remember. You might not know this, Jason. I actually started the trombone in Texas, West Texas to be specific.
I don't remember that. Where in West Texas were you?
All the way west, El Paso.
El Paso.
Town of El Paso.
Yeah. And you're from Dallas area, right? So Midland is the halfway point between Dallas and El Paso.
And where'd you go? Midland Lee?
Midland High.
Midland High.
Yeah.
So were you playing like the Friday Night Lights schools like Odessa Permian?
We did.
Stuff?
So yeah, if you read the book or watch the movie, Midland High is featured in there. I believe it was after my time at Midland High, but I believe if you watch the Billy Bob Thornton Friday Night Lights movie, the band is the Midland High band.
Oh wow!
So they're
is it really?
Yeah,
That's
they're
crazy.
They're going to be in different uniforms based on whatever team it was, but they're representing a different band. So that is the Midland High band.
You never did football or anything?
I did not play football. I played soccer. I was not very good at soccer.
Did they know what soccer was?
Oh yeah, I had a decent soccer program. I guess the other thing, Texas is pretty sports crazy too.
A little bit.
So, but I love playing all sports. And in high school, I did soccer, but I up till junior high, I just loved playing everything. The other interesting thing musically about Midland High was if you watch the Friday Night Lights movie, that the band that scored that, it's an instrumental soundtrack by this band called Explosions in the Sky, and those are Midland High guys as well. That's a Midland.
They went to Midland High.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
it's got a West Texas vibe to their music.
Yeah, it's just like that. I think the music matches that movie so much with that, just the feel and the vibe. It's a great score. I love that movie just as the personal connection to my hometown. It's a cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you from high school, did you go into Manhattan School after that?
I went to University of Texas. I started there. My high school lesson teacher was University of Texas grad. I always tried to follow in the footsteps of like the, say, trombone players that are a year or two older than me. And I was really lucky every place I went to school that there were just amazing trombone players that are a year or two older than me. And from Midland is 1 year older than me in school, Bill Thomas, who's in Zurich Town Hall Orchestra and everything like that. So when I was growing up, I'd hear Bill play and just like, I think Bill sounded like a professional player when he was like 14 years old. He was like unbelievable. And so I always looked up to Bill. And Bill started at University of Texas before he went to Curtis. So I knew if Bill was going to school there, that would be like a good choice to go down there. And they had Donald Knobb, who's really terrific trombone teacher. I started there and loved it. Loved living in Austin. Loved going to University of Texas. Great school. But after 2 years there, I wanted to really get more focused on orchestral playing, be in like a big city, and I transferred to San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and I studied with Mark Lawrence out there. So.
All over the place.
Yeah.
So when did you know that you wanted to do performance? Did you know in high school, or was it halfway through UT?
Yeah, I think I really started to fall in love with music and trombone specifically, and have an idea that that's something I wanted to figure out and pursue, doing Texas music stuff like we did in all-state orchestra. We played like Mahler 2. Like we did for all of it. We did the first movement.
They're always so ambitious in
the
Texas.
chorus and stuff. Yeah, but I remember thinking it was just like I could do this for like you can do this as a job. Like I'll sign me up for that. That sounds.
You're like every piece is like this, right?
Yeah, this is what it's always like. So, but yeah, those kind of experiences, getting to play that kind of repertoire and being surrounded by just other musicians that were totally into it, and that was such a thrill. And I wanted to do that like forever.
Were you in school with John Schwalm?
Yeah. John's 1 year younger than me. So
how about like Billy Hunter? Were you there with him?
Yeah, Billy was there. Yeah, so there was a really great brass studio there at University of Texas when I was there. They had Don Knobb was the trombone teacher, and he had a great tradition. They had Ray Crisara, who was teaching trumpet, and he was I believe he was principal of the NBC Orchestra with Toscanini and all that. And then they had Wayne Barrington, who was retired Chicago Symphony. So they had this really powerhouse brass faculty and like a lot of strong players across all the instruments. I look back at those players and like that group of people, they're still out, very high success rate from the time. It was a very, very good music school. So yeah, I definitely appreciated University of Texas starting me out.
And you guys didn't cross paths in San Francisco at all, did you?
You were there after me, but we met in Aspen. That's where.
Yeah, we met in Aspen 2003.
Where the beer flows like wine.
Yeah.
Aspen, California, beautiful.
Yeah.
The Sunshine State.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to exhaust all my Dumb and Dumber references.
Oh, I can keep going. So okay, you go from UT Austin, and then you went to. Did you go to San Francisco or MSM next?
San Francisco for finish off undergrad. Same thing there. That was like I got lucky that there were students that were a little bit older than me that were better than me that I could try to learn from and copy. And Nathan Zagantz was there, and he just sounded like a monster, like
still does.
Yeah, and it was a fun environment out there. I thought the San Francisco Symphony sounded amazing. They had a youth symphony. I was young enough to still play in the youth symphony when I was there, and so the San Francisco Symphony runs a youth symphony. That was a great experience. So we get to play in the players from the symphony, and that youth symphony still sounds about as. It was a great sounding orchestra. They sounded amazing, even though it was a youth symphony. I still remember some of the programs we played sounded unbelievable. I used to listen to the San Francisco Symphony just every chance I could get, and we used to find every way we could to get in and hear as many concerts as we could. And it was a great time period for the symphony. I thought the brass section sounded wonderful. They were really like well blended and homogenous, but still could be like very exciting. Turn it on at times. It was a cool part of my education, just listening.
What was it like studying with Mark?
Mark was very. I think when I went to Texas with Don Knobb, we very covered a lot of material very quickly. And I don't know if this is my lessons or with everybody, but it was a lot of like, all right, good, you played that, like, let's try the next thing, and we were working on just, learning a lot of repertoire. And then Mark, to me, felt like a bit of a gear shift because he was way more detail oriented with my playing and my technique and my approach to playing. So we spent a lot more time kind of going over some fundamentals, and I do give him a lot of credit for that, to give me like a really thoughtful foundation for how to approach technique and the physical approach to playing. I remember, and I always tell my students this, I think everybody, when they go to a lesson teacher or they go to college, at some point you get this photocopied, here's my warm-up and routine. And it's, a couple pages, and you're supposed to do it, every day. Mark handed me, it looked like a small phone book. And it was an interesting concept because he said there's no way you can play everything you have to play in a day. You spread it out over a longer period of time. And you have to, I can't just give you, like 4 pages that this is everything you need to do on the horn. So there would be just like, you'd find something he really likes from this book and throw it in this big pile. And he said, you should think of doing this over the course of the week or over the course of the month, and being, look back at what you need, maybe don't go so far on this if it's going pretty well. Focus on these ones that are challenging. That was a really new approach to me, to hear that people thought of it not as just like a daily thing and a checklist that you do, but it's a weekly or a monthly concept to how you think about your technique, and that you have to be reflective. You have to be evaluating what you need. And so that was really interesting. And I learned so much from him. I think one of the most valuable classes we had was our section class, which he took so much care in teaching you how to play with other players, how to balance, how to blend, how to think about intonation, and how to be musical. And that was the reason I went to school there. I went and auditioned, and I played for him, and I had a lesson, and it was great. I thought it was a really awesome lesson. And then he said, come to hear trombone class. And I just sat in there and heard the guys that were there play, and it sounded so good. And then he would coach him, but it sounded so much better. And I was like, wow, I want to learn how to play as a member of a section the way that these guys do. That was so awesome. And I was sold. I was like, I want to learn how to do that.
I wonder if you'd agree with me on this. I went to San Francisco for just a hot second. Literally, I went there for 2 months. I went to the conservatory. Then I dropped out of school just because I was
too big time
work in the area, and I just couldn't keep up. Yeah, that's it. While I was eating ramen and rice and beans every day to survive. I was just trying, I decided to drop out of school, but I was still attending classes and stuff, or not classes, but like studio stuff. They let me just like observe as like a quasi student, I guess. But anyhow, I first started working with Mark Lawrence at Music Academy, and he's such a nice guy, like the nicest guy. But there's always, I think everyone has like a story of the time they had a lesson with Mark where he lets you have it one way or another. And I remember my summer at Music Academy, I had just come off this streak of either like being runner-up or finalist for 3-4 auditions in a row. And I honestly thought at that time I was very humble about this thing. And I think I was outwardly, but I think Mark saw that I was kind of resting on my laurels, so to speak. And I know I was sounding pretty good, but I wasn't doing the work that I needed to do to get me to that next step of actually ending up in the winner circle. And man, he read me the freaking riot act in a calm manner, but he let me have it. Like, second place isn't good enough, sort of thing. And it's even more powerful coming from such a mild mannered guy like him.
I remember, almost because Mark is so mild mannered and so calm and all that, it was almost the opposite. It's sort of like when your parents say, "I'm just disappointed in you."
Oh, that's the worst.
Exactly. Totally it.
Yeah, and so I'd have a lesson where I thought I worked something up and made it sound really good, and he's just it's still not good enough. And that was way harder to hear than you need to get your act together, or anything like that. It just that he had such a high standard and really had to do a lot to impress him. that it was.
Oh yeah,
that was a challenge. But I had a great experience. Mark was great. I loved working with Paul Welcomer as well. So within awesome. Youth Symphony, he was our primary coach, and then he did a lot of other brass ensemble and stuff like that around school. He's very thoughtful musician, also a super nice guy. The whole crew out there was it had a nice vibe, kind of very thoughtful, very nice people. And then I was really lucky to have the studio was strong. So yeah, Nathan was there towards the end of school. There we had these two trombonists from New Zealand join the studio. Mm-hmm. So Dave Bremner and Doug Cross, and they were super great players and really fun guys to work with. They're in the big orchestras in New Zealand now. So it was always a really good studio.
Sometimes that's the most important thing in a studio is not, I mean, of course, having a great teacher, but if there's a culture established, if there's other players older than you motivating you that can do things you can't do, I mean, there's nothing like that, especially now that we're on the professor side. Yeah. Seeing that if that happens in your own studio, how infectious it can be.
Yeah. Steve Trapani was playing bass trombone while there. He was just a fine player and a super nice guy. There was so many others that were there as well. I don't name drop everybody, but it was a great environment, and I got a lot out of being there. The whole Bay Area too. At the time, a lot of the former San Francisco Conservatory students who were then around playing in the different orchestras around the Bay Area, I still get to know them and
that's the freeway.
There's
Bruce, Chris.
Bruce. Bruce rented me a room one year, so Bruce is my roommate. So I get to learn from guys like that too. It's really awesome to model yourself on Mark Lawrence or Joe Alessi or someone who's at the absolute peak of their game. But then there's a lot more avenues that your career might take as a trombonist, and to see people that are succeeding and doing a good job in other avenues is, I think, really helpful for a young trombonist to see as well. So
absolutely. So two years there, and then moving on to the crazy New York City.
2 years at Manhattan School of Music.
Studying with Sir Per
Brevig was my main teacher at the Manhattan School of Music. I also got to work a lot with David Finlayson because he did all the sectionals and coached our trombone quartet. And so Nathan was also there at Nathan Zagans was also there at Manhattan School of Music. So got to kind of kept together there for some of my studio mates and all that. But that was fun. I loved living in New York, loved getting to hear all the great musicians in town. It's humbling how good the best are there and how many good players there are in the city. So it was an eye-opener, and I really loved my time there.
Were you there just 2 years and then
just 2 years.
Got out?
Yeah.
And where were you going right after that?
I won a 1-year position with the Colorado Springs Symphony.
Okay.
So it was the Colorado Springs Symphony at the time when I played there, so we'll probably get to that in a second.
So we're gonna get to the part I've been wanting to talk about the most. We kind of got a little background and something that is
when Jason got to meet me. That's what you want to talk about. That's a pivotal moment.
That is going to be the peak of this conversation.
That might be about that time, but I can't remember exactly yet. So I went to Aspen Music Festival in the summer, right after I graduated from Manhattan School of Music, and they had an audition for the Colorado Springs Symphony during Aspen. So I drove over and took the audition. And
I remember. What year was this? This was
2001.
Okay, so I remember the tail end of this.
Yeah,
we met in Aspen in 2003.
Yeah,
and what's going to happen? Or I don't want to tell your story. But some stuff had already gone down when I had met you.
Yeah. So
I remember.
So I played with Colorado Springs Symphony for 1 year. When they had the audition for the permanent spot, I did not win. Someone else won. So I was out on the streets again. But I actually went to talk about going to school for a hot second. I even went negative, less than a hot second. I was going to go to Manus for a professional studies, kind of post-grad stuff.
Shout out to Manus.
Yeah, so I went to Manus. I went back to New York, looked for an apartment, found a place to stay, was fixing to go to orientation and all that, and then San Antonio Symphony. I guess Colin Williams had won his spot with Atlanta at the time, so there was a quick vacancy in San Antonio Symphony, and since I knew Nathan Zagans really well from all over the place,
Nathan everywhere.
Nathan put in a good word for me, and I got to do a 1 year in San Antonio Symphony. So I had to tell Manus, no, I'm going to go play for San Antonio in the year.
And they're like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
This is a world-class education. You cannot do that.
So I lost, didn't get to go to Manus, but moved down to San Antonio. So I played there, and that's where my career starts to take form, and it's what my career is all about.
Okay, and so what I was kind of teasing earlier, and we're gonna walk through it. Something kind of let's call it a personal record. I don't think anyone's ever gonna break this.
Yeah.
Nor should anyone want to.
Nor should anyone want to.
Don't try at home. Yeah.
Just an insane bout of bad luck.
Yeah.
And good luck by winning. Obviously, you're doing great winning these positions, winning so many different positions, and we're going to walk through them all. And we were talking at lunch the other day, 5 different groups.
Yeah, depending on how you count it, or you want to, like if we are keeping records. So with the year I've got the appointment to play this one year with San Antonio Symphony, they went bankrupt in the spring. I think we played till, I don't know, maybe a little bit past spring break. Oh, I can remember the date. We went to, Nathan was gone, and Bill Thomas came and subbed with us, and we went and watched the NCAA tournament was in San Antonio. So I know we were playing up till March because Bill.
Was that when they beat Detroit?
Well, Texas was in it. So Bill and I went and watched Texas play when they made it to the Final Four.
Oh, NCAA.
NCAA. So we saw.
I remember this.
We saw Texas play. I guess it's Elite 8 game in San Antonio, and they end up losing to Syracuse in the Final Four. But they had a great team with TJ Ford and all that. And
Carmelo, and
they lost
Carmelo.
Carmelo Anthony was on Syracuse, and they were really good. So they beat Texas.
Welcome to the Third Coast Trombone Retreat
Sports Talk
basketball podcast.
Yeah. So we must have made it till at least March. So maybe like April or so, they shut down the season. The San Antonio Symphony did. In the background, I talked to my friends in Colorado Springs, and Colorado Springs also shut down at that time, went bankrupt. So the two orchestras that I have like a real kind of relationship with playing had gone bankrupt. So I actually thought, I was talking to my family and thought about it a lot, and thought that maybe playing trombone is not the most stable and best career choice in the world. So
you got some bad info. I don't know what you're talking about.
And so I decided to go back to college and get a business degree. So I went to Case Western University in Cleveland, and I got an MBA. So kind of took 2 years. I thought I was going to hang up my trombone, and I got to Cleveland, and some people convinced me to, you should. The Canton Symphony is having, you can play a sublist audition. And it's like, I don't know. I've been working on my spreadsheets and my finance and all that, but I went and played, and ended up getting to work a lot around the Cleveland area.
That's a very good orchestra, the Canton.
Oh, the Canton Symphony sounded fantastic. I remember once playing there, I want to say it was with, I think the section, we played Mahler 2 there. Chris Oliver was playing principal.
I played with him there for a little bit. Yeah.
Chris was playing principal, and then I played second. Jim Albrecht played third. I can't remember the guy's name who played bass, and then Craig Knox was playing tuba.
Oh wow!
And so it's like the Canton Symphony was awesome. Like they played good stuff. Chris sounded great. He was a fine player and always fun to play with.
Chris Oliver's second trombone in the Dallas Symphony.
Yeah,
I feel like with all these names we're throwing out, we should start saying who they are.
Yeah,
for people that don't know.
Yeah,
or people can go on the World Wide Web and search the names themselves.
Yeah, and
to back up just a second, when you decided to get this MBA, did you have any specific kind of goal in mind of what you wanted to do with it?
I was kind of nominally interested in maybe coming up with a way to help orchestras from the business side of things. So being someone that understood enough of how the orchestra works from a player's perspective and doing that, but seeing maybe a gap in people that understood how to run the show. So kind of had an idea of doing some arts management type thing. I did look into, at the time, like the old ASOL, the American Symphony Orchestra League Fellowship. They had a program at Aspen Music Festival. They used to bring in young, people that could potentially turn into kind of a symphony manager. I thought about maybe doing that, but I didn't want to necessarily be pigeonholed in terms of only doing symphony. I thought if I was going to go back to school, well, maybe if there's a chance to make some Wall Street money, I might as I could go that way too.
Yeah, let's cash in.
So if I'm going to get an MBA I do want to keep the door open to being able to, make some real money.
I know a lot of people on Wall Street that started as musicians that just use that kind of way of thinking and brain power and creativity and have been very successful doing
Yeah,
that.
one of my former students from here, he ended up going to Oberlin and did his trombone degree there, but he now has been working in finance, I guess, and
Very cool.
always follow him. And
So continuing on to the Cleveland Opera,
Yeah.
is that what you're about
so
to...
Cleveland Opera, as I started to do some kind of freelance stuff around the Cleveland area, there was a audition for Cleveland Opera. Played probably 3-4 operas per year or something like that. And so I auditioned for that. Got a job playing second trombone there for my second year of business school. Got to play in the opera, and pretty confident they went bankrupt as well. Yeah, so
they definitely did.
And so that's my third organization I played
3
with.
for 3?
It's gone bankrupt.
Oh man.
Oh, we're still getting to the good stuff.
So then I
No.
started to look for jobs, and I got a job working in the administration of the New Mexico Symphony. They wanted to hire a full-time personnel manager there. I saw it. I interviewed down there. When I moved down there, I really liked my boss that hired me. He had worked in a lot of different orchestras and was really an interesting character, and I enjoyed working for him. I got to very quickly, I think because I had the MBA and the music knowledge, my job grew from personnel manager very quickly to add some new tasks, and I was called the orchestra manager. So I got to do a little bit more kind of working with the conductor and helping to talk to the artist managers as they plan the season. So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that blend of knowledge of and love of the music, but getting to work on putting together a season program. All the people that are involved in that and trying to point that in the direction of what ends up being a season package. So that was fun. I got to talk to artist managers on the phone. I got to pick Yo-Yo Ma up at the airport and stuff like that. So it was cool. I enjoyed that.
Seeing a little bit from the other side. Perspective.
And after working there for a while, I was a little bit worried, though. The boss that I came to work for there, so one of the reasons I got to do the orchestra manager job, he started as the general manager and then was promoted to executive director. So then I got to assume some of his duties that he used to do as the general manager. But then he wasn't going to do executive director for a while. He was like a short-time person. So I didn't know if I wanted to work there, if he wasn't necessarily going to be there forever, if there was going to be some change, what that would mean for me. And I started to see some cracks in the New Mexico Symphony's maybe their long-term stability. And of course, the New Mexico Symphony went bankrupt shortly after that. I worked there for one full season, and then I had a family friend that was starting a business, and I agreed to try my hand at that, maybe do something different with the MBA skills and do a little market research and kind of strategy and analysis for them with their business plan. And it was a good time for me, I thought, to make a transition.
At this point, you had to be super glad you got the MBA, because you're just like, for these.
It was one of the things that so people have asked me, do you regret getting an MBA if you just ended up playing trombone? Because it came back to, now you're just playing trombone again. And you had to go to school, and that was a big investment. And I really, really think that I learned so much about managing my career and how to think about it, how to think about things kind of like strategically, and I use it all the time. But I think that one of the big things is it made me less worried. I'm not worried if I need to do something different, if my job needs to change, and your job will always change, that I can figure out how to do it. Again, and so it did give me a lot of confidence. So my next step, during the New Mexico Symphony, I did end up coming out of the office and playing a little bit every once in a while as a sub, and
in Hawaii.
No, in New Mexico.
I see.
So New Mexico would, they'd occasionally need an extra trombone, and I get to play. It was a fun year. The bass trombonist their long-term bass trombonist was taking a year sabbatical that year, and Jeremy Van Hoy, who's the bass trombonist in Colorado Springs, who I played with up there, was coming down and playing. So it was really fun to see him and get to occasionally play with him in a section again. I remember the first time I got to sub there, everybody knew me as the guy in the office, and they had like a kiddie show, this educational show, and we were playing some excerpts from Scheherazade. And one of their trombone players was the assistant conductor, so he had to conduct. So one person's out, another trombone player has to miss, so two people are down. And then Jeremy's, coming in from out of town. Their normal bass trombone player's taking a sabbatical. So it's this section of like all sub trombones. And I think people are probably like wondering like, oh, who are those guys? And there's Jason from The Office. I guess we must have hit the bottom of the barrel with the substitutes. But they hired Jim Decker, who teaches at Texas Tech University, to drive over. It's not too far from New Mexico, and he's a great player. He's my predecessor here in Hawaii Symphony, doing everything I do. So he before he did Texas Tech, he was principal of the orchestra here, and then taught at the university and the Punahou School and all that. And so Jim's fantastic, sounds awesome. I played second, and then Jeremy played third. And I remember kind of the feeling like when we hit that first couple chords of, the first big note of Scheherazade, people just kind of turning around and being like, oh, wait, who are these guys? It was pretty.
Jason from The Office can really play.
Jason from The Office, and I don't know these other two guys, but it was a fun feeling getting to play again. So I missed it when I was predominantly working in the office. I think I worked really, really hard. I had the keys to the office, which had a rehearsal hall. So I worked really, really hard to keep my playing up after everybody went home, and I'd go to the rehearsal hall and still play and try to sound good if I did get called for something. And
did it make you kind of have a newfound appreciation for just getting to play the trombone for a living?
Yeah, I did. I missed it. I think that was the time period that made me realize, maybe like I joke a little bit about, wanting to get that Wall Street money, but as your career goes in different phases, I think when you're younger and you're in your 20s, you're just trying to figure out if you can do it, get to play as well as you can. But then you actually get to start working a little bit. And in some sense, like when I played, with Colorado Springs and San Antonio, that changed my mindset, because it's like I proved to myself I could do it. And so then I started to think, well, I know I can play trombone, and I can do that, but I also want to have these other life goals. It's like you want to buy a house. So then you start to think, well, like it's not just about playing trombone. It's about like how do I do what I need to do in my life the best. And I think that it was then going back and working in the office that made me realize that, well, no, I really need to have a certain amount of trombone in my life, and where those monetary type things, or where some of the stability or something that I was craving, I'm willing to trade some of that just to make sure that music is always there. And it's been definitely a big journey to get to that point.
So how did we get here on this
so
island?
during that time period, when I stopped working in New Mexico Symphony, started working for a family friend who was starting the business, which was really loose, just occasionally I had a lot of free time. I was just occasionally have a little project and do some research, and I just practiced so much trombone. I got back into audition circuit and started to kind of go from, feeling a little bit rusty to, advancing at an audition or two, and then ultimately won the audition here for what was the Honolulu Symphony at the time. So we had auditions we had auditions in Chicago. They used to fly to the mainland and audition.
Oh, that's convenient.
And they'd pick a big city so they get a good turnout.
Sure.
So I flew to Chicago from Texas. So I was back home in Texas, and flew to Chicago and won an audition for Hawaii. And so I was excited.
Had you even been here before?
It's funny. I got asked to play as a substitute here just a couple weeks before the audition. So I came out here and played a week as an extra, maybe 3-4 weeks before the audition that I won. That was my first trip here as a musician. I went on a family trip here to meet like all my relatives. My aunt used to work in Maui. We all took a family trip to visit her one time.
So you got a sense,
yeah,
of like what it would be like here, what the orchestra sounded like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew it was a very good orchestra. I think that this orchestra has definitely. If you talk to people that are here that have made their career here and played here, this orchestra has just a really strong tradition, really fine players in all sections, a lot of people that have come here and then moved on to really the top tier orchestras, and I think this orchestra thinks of itself as artistically a very strong orchestra, and I playing with the group, you hear that. There's some very fine players. So coming out here and playing with the orchestra, as a sub, I loved it. Obviously loved Hawaii. Hawaii's
it's really hard
magical,
to like.
and so I was really looking forward to coming out here. But if you're following the story so far, you probably realize that we Honolulu Symphony quickly went bankrupt. So moving out here, I was in another orchestra that fell apart.
So were you just not practicing your scales enough?
So I think that this is an interesting thing here. I don't know how people in, say, the donor community or just the broader community of what they would say the reason an orchestra goes bankrupt. And having been in several, I think I can say. So the two orchestras that Colorado Springs and San Antonio and Honolulu were all medium-sized cities. And I think that the medium-sized cities maybe have a harder time choosing an identity for the orchestra, whether it should be kind of a big orchestra and you should commit to it and embrace that artistically. So you could look at a city like Salt Lake City, like that has not a huge city, but has like a pretty big orchestra. And then there's an easy thing if you're doing the numbers for it, if you're crunching the numbers and say like, well, we're not that big, we're not a major market city, and wanting it to tip to the other side and be smaller because it's easier to manage, so just have a smaller orchestra. All these cities are New Mexico, Albuquerque's a huge population city, or medium-sized population city, but not a tremendous amount of corporate wealth and all that. San Antonio, same way, Honolulu. So we have these at the very basic level. Every one of these orchestras is going to have an identity crisis, with its board, with its musicians that are that want to push for more and turn it into like a bigger orchestra, and maybe a board that wants to keep it on the smaller side. And then with that kind of tension and that stability, if you inject a major financial crisis on top of it, there's not enough slack where they can survive it. So whenever people are like, well, I don't know if people just like orchestra or like music anymore. It's not the case. This is real, just like business decisions. This is, board setting budget, musicians agreeing to contracts. This is like nitty gritty details. And then you hit bad timing where you have 2008, where the financial meltdown from like, the housing crisis, subprime loans, stuff like that. So you have everybody's stock market tanks, donors don't want to give stuff. So there's a financial crisis. There was a pretty, mild recession after 2011 or September 11th, 2001. There was a downturn there in giving, and people changed their priorities. So those financial crises will knock off the kind of orchestras that at the time have a weaker financial position. That's what happened. There's real like business decisions. All those orchestras don't get to control their hall. They're not big enough to have their own hall. So they're like at, mercy of other forces, and that definitely was one of the contributing factors here. But that's my main thing. The orchestra here, it had bad timing. It hit a bad financial spell at the same time that the world had a bad financial spell, and it tanked an orchestra.
Nick and I have talked about it. I just can't imagine going through that. It's hard enough to get a job, and the feeling of relief when you do get a job, let alone 4 or 5 times. Uh-huh. How did you keep positive? Did you keep positive? How did you keep your resolve?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that right when I got here, I met my wife.
Always helps.
Right about the time that the orchestra started to fall apart, we had our son.
Amazing.
So there's things in life that are more important than the orchestra and the trombone and everything like that. That kind of took maybe.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. This is a trombone part.
Yeah, that kind of took my mind off things, and I could focus on other aspects of life at the time. I think even though we went bankrupt, there were still concerts to play. The orchestra stopped, but then the opera is an independent organization, so we still play the opera, and then we'll do a certain number of benefit concerts, and there were plans in place to reform. So it was a little bit of dark time. During that time period, we had a big Broadway show come through town. Like Wicked came and posted up here in the hall, and I played Wicked for I think like 10 weeks or something like that. And so little things like that. It kept going. I obviously started like trying some auditions again. Nothing really came of it, but
it's a long trip to take an audition.
Yeah, that's a challenge from here to go to an audition and feel like you can play your best. Not generally having the I'll go a week early and get over the time zone change. It's like going to the East Coast is from here to travel to an audition on the East Coast is the equivalent of going to Europe. just the amount of time you're going to spend on the plane, the number of times, from the East Coast to Europe, like it's about the same. So that time zone change, that amount of time spent on a plane, the expense and everything. So it is a challenge to go take auditions.
I wanted to elaborate more on, you were talking about the financial downturn of 2008. And, a lot of our younger listeners out there were probably not just normal for that age, not really paying attention to what was going on then. But for us that were of age living through that time, I mean, if you look back and look at 2008 through 2010, 2012, how many orchestras went bankrupt and folded?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that Syracuse,
yeah,
New York City Opera, that was a huge one.
Right.
Louisville restructured, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then, you're talking about New Mexico,
and I think
Honolulu,
even ones that even really big. I think as a result, like a ripple effect from that, a couple of years, you had really, really big orchestras that would then have like Detroit and Minnesota and Atlanta and everything having major like big like lockouts and everything, as they're trying to say that like their board members are looking at this financial picture and saying like, oh, we can't do this anymore, and freaking out. They look at say Honolulu and say, oh well, we're next, that can happen there, we're not as big as New York City or LA or something, we should maybe think about scaling this back a little bit. And so luckily it didn't. Those orchestras kind of stayed with it and didn't end up like really cutting back or downsizing. But even the ones that didn't fully go into bankruptcy, it produced a lot of angst amongst these orchestras. People that are, I'm sure, in the middle of their careers were quite worried about
sure.
about things going backwards or taking big pay cuts. And
the funny thing, I remember talking to Randy Hawes from Detroit Symphony right after that whole lockout happened. That was 2011, I think. And he was telling me his biggest concern wasn't, they lost a lot of players because it was quite a long lockout. So people moved on to different orchestras, just not seeing security there anymore. And a lot of them were string players that left. And he said, I'm not worried about being able to get butts in seats. We're going to have auditions and hire people who are just as qualified to play that job as the last person. But the difference is losing the experience of playing in this specific orchestra, in this specific hall, making a specific sound that makes the Detroit Symphony sound like the Detroit Symphony. And these are kind of like the little things, I mean, not so little, but the things that make these lockouts, the ripple effect within the lockout itself, that are so detrimental for the organization.
Yeah, it's hard. We lost a ton of really great musicians when we went bankrupt, and we're still working through the backlog of auditions to fill all those spots.
Sure.
And then we went from the peak of the Hawaii Symphony, I think it was a 40-week orchestra. So, a pretty full season, not quite year round. But when I joined, I think it was a 34-week season. So they had come down a little bit from their peak. And then, we had a couple years of rebuilding where it was only 12 weeks or something. So now to attract people back, it's harder. And that's one of the lessons I would take away if I ever can talk to symphony board members and that sort of thing, is that it takes way more time to rebuild. It may be appealing of like, oh, this, in the business world of like, oh, you do a quick restructuring and all that, but this organism, that, like you mentioned, the years it takes to make a sound together, it can go away really quickly. So it's way better to invest it. Like, let's keep it going, let's keep it together, because it's not something that's easy to rebuild from scratch.
So something we talk a lot about at the retreat is resourcefulness, being opportunistic, not having something you kind of touched on, not having tunnel vision about your career. Like, my only career goal is to play in this orchestra or have this type of job. And something I really admire about how you formed your career, let alone getting an MBA, you've come here, you have your symphony job, it's gone through its trouble, it's rebuilding, there is optimism. You're also in this group that I'd really like to talk to you about called the Royal Hawaiian Band.
Mm-hmm. So the Royal Hawaiian Band is the band of the Hawaiian royal family. So Hawaii was its own kingdom up through the late 1800s. So they had a king and a queen. You can go visit the Royal Palace downtown. As many monarchies of the 1800s, they had they had their military guard. They had a band, and our band goes back to 1836.
Wow.
It's a very old band with a continuous tradition, and it was ultimately taken over by the city and county of Honolulu. So we have a municipal band. It's a full-time, year-round job. That's kind of, if I had to rank my work, that's the one that is I do the most. So since it's a full-time job, we do work 5 days a week. We do something, pretty much every one of those 5 days. So we play a couple of public concerts, one at the Royal Palace. We do a concert every Friday there. We do a concert in the big park in Waikiki. So 2 outdoor concerts, and then a lot of community service and outreach type events. We're maybe a little bit like a military band in that we play a lot of ceremonial type things. So the mayor can ask us to play at a speech or something like that, and we'll maybe play Star Spangled Banner and our state song, the Hawaii state song, and maybe some light music as things are getting set up. But we do that. We do parades. We do march through Waikiki. We do.
I love a good parade.
Yeah,
they have these amazing outfits. The first time I met up with them, he was like, "Look for
I've
the guy
seen him
that looks
online.
like
It's crazy.
Yeah. Looks like a milkman." Is that what you said?
Yeah. So we have two costumes, or two uniforms. One is all white with a red sash that we wear kind of around our waist. Red and yellow sash. Red and yellow is the colors of the Hawaiian royal family. And then we wear a kukui nut lei. So it's the kukui nut. So it's like a polished nut. So we have a lei, and then our sash, and then our alternate that's our more formal uniform. And then we have an alternate uniform, which is an aloha shirt. So like what people call a Hawaiian shirt. So we get a shirt made for the band every probably 3 years. They'll do a new design, and it's really neat. Like they'll choose a local designer to make a specific shirt for the band, and so the shirt will always have a story about it. I mean,
cool.
in terms of like what the
So it is uniform. The shirt, like like everyone has the same.
Yeah,
shirt.
everyone's. Ours is if you search for the band online and look for pictures of it, right now we just started a couple months ago our new shirt, which is kind of an orange and yellow, really cool. The if you can look closely, it has these Hawaiian tree snails, these endangered tree snails on it. So it's a picture. It's the snail and the plant that it lives with in a symbiosis. So one of the things is with the shirt to show that all things are interrelated, and it takes a whole community or a whole environment to support one thing. And so there's always a meaning to our shirts. It was great. The designer, the creator, when he came. He came and presented the shirts to us and told us the story of how he was inspired and like what he was thinking and what all the symbols mean to him. It's really, really special. There's a lot of magical things like that about Hawaii, about the way that's very Hawaii. The way we do things out here.
I'm experiencing that this week a little bit, and I take it when you got this job, I'm guessing you didn't know anything about the Royal Hawaiian Band at that point. Or
I didn't know before I came to Hawaii. I started. That's when you ask about like when everything falls apart, and I think that's how when being prepared for that. I guess a bankruptcy for the orchestra is like kind of a very slow process. You see it coming. So I was able to prepare. I was able to take on more teaching, do that sort of thing. But I did start at that time period. One of the great things is I started playing with the band as a substitute. The band plays so much that they need a lot of substitutes. So I was able to play with the band a fair amount when the orchestra was bankrupt. They actually had, unfortunately, one of the trombonists, my predecessors, he passed away. So there was an opening, and it takes sometimes a while for them to have the audition and fill. But they had an open chair like every day for a long time. So I played before getting the permanent position. I played on a very regular basis as a substitute there for a year or so before I started as a full-time
got
member.
on the radar.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a unique organization. We play a mix of kind of traditional band music. They have their own kind of internal tradition. One of the kings in the late 1800s decided he really wanted to up the game of the band, and he went to the emperor or the Kaiser, like he went to Germany, and he said, hey, can you send me a bandmaster for my band? So he sent over this Prussian guy named Henry Berger, who came over and brought a lot of the kind of European tradition of the band. And then he's also known as bringing
the Burgermeister.
Yeah, he's bringing.
Sorry.
He brings
Sorry.
He wrote down a lot of Hawaiian music. So put a lot of Hawaiian music to notation and everything. Cool. So there's a neat kind of symbiosis there in terms of some cross-cultural blending. And so we'll play in the band. We'll have a polka, or we have like this really German, like a German march or a waltz or something like that that he wrote in the band, but it might have a very Hawaiian theme or is being influenced by a Hawaiian chant or melody.
Whoa.
So
wild.
It is a neat organization. It's definitely, if you're from here, you've seen the band at holidays, parades, events. It's kind of been a part of the city. When I meet people, they're like, "Oh, I remember when the band came to my school when I was a kid." It's definitely a part of the fabric of the city and has this great tradition.
Yeah, and you guys are stewards of like Hawaiian culture, and maybe one of the only formal ones.
It's something that you wouldn't think about, but yeah, it's definitely keeping a history alive, of a certain time period in Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian history, and I'm very honored to get to play in it.
Yeah, I hope I get to hear.
That's very unique, very cool.
Yeah, so that's you talked about being resourceful and everything like that. I guess maybe it's the MBA, but I now think about almost my jobs, and maybe a lot of musicians are this way. It's kind of a portfolio, like of assets that produce revenue, and then you have to invest certain time in each one of them. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I always talk to my colleagues who here end up having a very similar life in terms of having to play a little bit over here, play a little bit over there, teach a little bit over here. But I mean, in some ways, I think it feels safer. And
Absolutely.
like I could never get the rug pulled out from under me on the Symphony again. It would be terrible if the Symphony went away, and I'd have to rejuggle my finances and do some planning and all that, but I'd still have the band.
Be okay.
Yeah.
And you're teaching.
Yeah, and I have teaching, and so this collection of we always hear about the gig economy. You talk about that, and how that's what the world is going to be like, and you're like, wait a second, musicians have been living that for a long time, and so if anybody needs advice or any way to think about it, we've been living that for a while. But that's how things have evolved.
Yeah.
For me,
I would argue that your resourcefulness started, not as a result of business school, but going to business school in and of itself was a resourceful move. So you just seem to have a resourceful knack to the way you want to live life, and no matter what, surviving and thriving, even in conditions that are inherently not conducive to that. You seem to find a way to come out on top, which is, that's a lot of people have trouble doing that. And it's amazing how well you've done considering the crappy situations you've been put in,
Yeah.
And you get to live in Hawaii.
That's a pretty big payoff.
Yeah. I actually feel pretty fortunate and pretty lucky to have, I get to play my trombone every day for work, and I get to teach at places where I like the environment and I like the culture. And you can always look at grass is greener type situations, but I'm doing what I wanted to do back when I was in high school as a player. And could I be doing it someplace else? Or do you ever hear about a friend who's playing here or there and wonder, oh man, I wish I could, But I get a great opportunity to get to live and work in Hawaii, raise my family here, play trombone for my job, and teach trombone. So yeah, it's a good vibe.
Yeah, it could be worse. You could work for a living.
Yeah.
Like Sebastian said, one of the things that we kind of quote unquote preach at the Trombone Retreat is resourcefulness and keeping your options open. Not saying like options open outside of music, but that too, but options open within music, that sometimes opportunities are right in front of you. You just need to know how to seize them. And I think it's pretty amazing hearing your story, which is so unbelievably unique in an unfortunate way. But to hear how you rose above and just made it all happen no matter what. I think that's a really great learning opportunity for a lot of people, not just students, but just people generally.
I think a lot of when Nick and I went to Aspen together like way back, and if you think of all the people we went to Aspen with that summer, like almost everybody's still around doing stuff, and the people, you know, like list all the people. Oh, you know, so and so they went to school with you. I think that, you know, if you are open to this, isn't going to be a linear path. But I don't think anybody's job is anymore. There's like there's so few jobs where you're gonna get handed like you graduated from college. Wow, that's awesome. Here's like a pension and you know, like full benefits, and you can work here for 30 years and there's chances for promotion. That's not going to happen anymore. So you might as well play trombone. Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. Honestly, I read something, and I think it was in the New York Times or something like that, that the average person switches careers like 2 or 3 times now.
Right.
Yeah.
Versus it used to be pretty like not only rare but devastating to switch careers because that was a sign of instability.
Right.
And you would lose your pension that you worked so hard for. Pensions, you know, are not so stable anymore, especially in the music field, and they're not so common in the private sector. You know, and so switching careers is not so scary anymore, and you know, I think that's so clear in the music world too. You're totally right. It's not a linear path.
Yeah, I think one of the things that made me really question trombone and want to go to business school was that my friends from high school had started to get like looks like they're getting their jobs, and so I went to University of Texas. A lot of my friends from high school went to University of Texas. Oh, so Austin's a tech city. So a lot of my friends started to get these jobs that were like, it's like, oh my gosh, like so-and-so I went to high school with, like he's making this much money. And like,
he already has his wife and kids already.
You're like that. And you could see that, am I missing out on that? It's like, I was in class with those guys. They're not so smart. I could figure that out. You know, like, am I leaving money on the table by not getting into this? But I think, what's weird now is that there's a lot more instability in my friends that have all those tech jobs. You know, like they can get canned so easily, and they have no stability. And so, but I have a pension. You know, like I have like maybe you know, overall less dollars. You know, than you know, like a business. A lot of people in finance or tech or anything like that. But yeah, I still have a job, and
every day you're doing something you enjoy, which you can't put a price on.
You can't put a price on that. Jason, awesome to talk to you again. I haven't spoke to you. I was going to bring this up actually. The last time I saw you, I don't know if you remember this. I was driving back from Sarasota Opera in Florida back to San Francisco, and I stopped in New Mexico to get new tires.
Oh yeah, I was trying to think. So I thought I couldn't remember if that was the last time I saw you, or we got together in Sarasota. I think you were doing the opera.
God.
Yeah, and so I went to visit.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I went to visit Nathan because they had spring. I wanted to watch spring training baseball.
Oh, nice.
So they had like spring, you know. So Nate and I went and saw some spring training games.
Nice.
And then you and Zach Bond were bumming around there, and we got together and played quartets.
Zach was just visiting. I remember we went to that bar with the outdoor, like a fire pit and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my! I forgot about that until you brought it up. Okay, so either way, that was the same year. So the last time I saw you in Sarasota and in New Mexico, in rapid succession. That was 2007, I think. Yeah. So I would like to see you sooner than 13 years from now.
Sure. Well, we would love to have you out here in Hawaii, and so we'll try to look for something that would make it worth your while to come out here.
Hawaiian trombone retreat. We can make it happen.
If I must.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome to see you here in New York, but I can't promise any amazing. I can promise you good food. That's all I can promise you. And you know, trombone opportunities, but I can't promise you, you know, beautiful beaches and palm trees.
It generally stays between 75 and 85, like indefinitely. Like that's
we need to stop this podcast before I get angry.
Hey, you should go outside. We should get you out there.
We're gonna go to the pool.
Oh God, I hate
and eat some poke.
Yeah.
Is it
I'm
poke?
gonna
Poke. It's poke.
You know.
All right.
I'm gonna stare out at the cold gray New York sky.
Yeah, right now you're just a dark shadow on your screen that we're looking at. It's very ominous.
Maybe that's what I really am. when we started that interview, I have not spoken to or heard anything about Jason. Well, not heard anything, but haven't kept up with Jason in like 18 years. So it's really, really good to hear his voice and hear his story. And nice to see you in Hawaii. Made me feel pretty jealous.
Yeah, he's literally on an island, and I think he went into good detail about how isolating it can be. It's such a beautiful place. Oh my gosh. And I can't tell you how many times and how many people told me, because this was right before the pandemic. So many people were like, man, you should have just stayed.
Yeah.
And I run that back in my mind so many times, like, oh man, that'd be nice. I don't know where I would stay. But it's such a beautiful place, and it's, you know, I'm sure a lot of people have been, and if you haven't, it's, you know, it's about, you know, there's a million tropical paradises, but it's the vibe, it's the history, it's the culture, it's the people, it's the food, and people really embrace it. And there's just this laid back attitude, and I think it's a perfect place for him. And after hearing his story and everything he's been through, you can't not be super excited for him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
He's got this great life. You know, the orchestra's doing fine now. He's that Royal Hawaiian Band. That's a good job. He was going into detail with me. Oh man, that's a stable, like those government jobs, especially with all the benefits, and you know, it's a lot of work and it's fun too. And there's a history there, and he really appreciates it, which is super cool. But yeah, it was really cool being there.
Well, yeah, I think it's, you know, it's interesting. You both work in bands. You and Jason, obviously different types of bands, because you play in a brass band, he plays in a band, like a wind band. But you know, obviously two different ways than the orchestra way of getting to a career. And obviously his way took a lot of zigs and zags to get to where he is now. A lot of hardship.
Sometimes you need those hardship to really appreciate things. That's why it's the same thing. It's like I always feel like if I have kids someday, I'm going to make sure they drive like a crappy car to start, or they get like a part-time job they don't necessarily like. You know, you gotta go through these things to really appreciate, and it actually informs your decisions, I think, going forward, to know what opportunity to follow. And, you know, he carved out a nice career. He's pretty comfortable. That condo we were in, that was pretty sweet. But yeah, I identify with him a lot, honestly, with how we built our careers. It's kind of that diversified portfolio. I don't have a one single job that I depend on. I have a lot of jobs that combine, and you kind of have safety in numbers. And just like you said, if I lost one thing, it would suck, but I'd be fine. And it also musically is just cool because you get to do a lot of different things and play with a lot of different people.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's obviously one thing I wish we would have gone into more, but we didn't want to make it Jason Byerlotzer pity party, obviously. It's just, you know, getting more into the mentality that he had to have when these groups would fold. It seems like he never stayed down, though. He always had a plan of how to move forward. I mean, going to school and getting his business degree, that's not sitting still, obviously, and winning other auditions. And I mean, he had so many different lives, it seems, before the one he's currently in. And obviously, he's found a way to make it work always. That's amazing.
I thought it was really interesting, the perspective he has, having the business knowledge that he gained from getting that degree and going through so many tough situations. He had one of the most clear ideas of what's happening with these orchestras, and going into detail about the mid-size orchestras, not the big city orchestras, but the mid-size orchestras really trying to find their identity, and trying to find their identity, trying to be too big, trying to be too small, board members not being sure what to do, it makes them financially weak. And when something surprising happens, he talked about the financial crisis, he talked about 9/11, these vulnerable arts organizations are in big trouble. And guess what happened right after this interview? Some unforeseen event that really is hurting the arts and everyone else, of course.
Well, the amazing thing is, you know, he was talking so much about these mid-level organizations, like you mentioned, but obviously those are being hurt. But it's the big organizations too, because the scale and the scope of this current pandemic is greater than anything the world has seen in over 100 years. And so it obviously transfers the things that he's talking about in regards to these smaller organizations or mid-sized organizations. But these big organizations in particular, it's going to be really hard for some of them because some of these organizations have never faced real financial hardship the way that the mid-sized organizations have. And I think that we're going to see in the next 6 months to 6 years about how these organizations are able to be creative in their financial problems.
Yeah, and we might have to adapt, kind of like we talked about in earlier episodes. And it's, your season was officially canceled until next year. We've heard about the biggest one we've heard about is Nashville so far, canceling their entire season until next summer. I think you're going to see this more and more. Groups I play in, similar situation. And, I think some people are going to try some creative things. I still have groups that are convinced we're going to put things on sooner than later. I'm cautiously optimistic there. But you're seeing it. Everyone's adapting. You're seeing a lot more things online. You're seeing a lot more creativity. I think you're going to see a lot more chamber music coming up, a lot more smaller ensembles that can fit on stage that don't need a big audience, and going in alternate venues or playing outside. It is the summer. And I think, like we always say, any challenging situation can also be an opportunity, not to sound overly optimistic, but there's always an opportunity to be creative, I think.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw a blanket on what you said, but
just throw it.
I'm going to toss it. Blanket's coming. I think some of these organizations have such a mindset of bottom line, like it's a business, even though it's not. I mean, it's not a business in the same way that Target is a business. They operate differently. Obviously, there's different categories. There's for-profit and non-for-profit businesses. These are supposed to be nonprofit, but either way, regardless of these differences, the people that tend to be on the boards and the people that tend to kind of control the purse strings of these organizations just have the mentality of bottom line. And that's not altogether terrible to have people that are thinking about the bottom line. But if it's the only consideration that you take, I think that it will keep the creativity out of the problem solving of this pandemic, which is, how do we put on concerts? That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be playing for people. We're supposed to be putting on ballets, operas, music for plays, whatever it may be, chamber music. And some of these people might sit down and look at it and say, well, gee, it's going to cost us this much money and we can only sell this many seats. It's better to just not do it. And that's what I'm afraid of. And I hope I'm wrong. I'm afraid I won't be, unfortunately. But I'm afraid that people in the top parts of the organization right now are so afraid of money out, money in problems that they're afraid to put money out no matter what. And, I understand it on one hand, but on the other hand, the more important issue is we should be out there performing. We should be putting stuff out there because the world really needs it right now. And we need to perform. People need to hear it. So I hope to see more of that, to do more of that, and that there's creative problem solving going on in these arts organizations.
Yeah, and of course we sympathize. I mean, they are running an arts organization, and money is a factor, and there might be sacrifices on all sides. You're already hearing people renegotiating things, but it doesn't. All money aside, it doesn't take away from the fact that we are artists, and our job is to serve, I think, and obviously, we have financial concerns, and that is a lot of to be determined. But it doesn't stop you from still creating your music, still getting better, finding ways to become a better artist and connect with more people and, make people have meaning in their lives. And that's for me, honestly, this thing, and I think with a lot of people, Nick can attest to this. I'm either incredibly obsessively productive or, the complete opposite. And, some days have been tough where I just can't get going. And the days when I can just create something, or even if it's something little for somebody else, it always makes my day better. Being active, exercising that creative brain that we're so spoiled with getting to exercise on a daily basis just with the nature of going to work. We forget that, that's a muscle we're used to using. And I think it's so important for, our happiness as well as others.
Yeah. Along those lines too, I guess this isn't the wet blanket, but it's asterisk to what you had to say, which is, with all that being said, I think it's okay right now to not be creative. If there's a day where you're just like, I just can't do it, I need to step aside, do something else.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, everyone's we're trying to get through this. Let's be honest.
Yep.
I don't think there's anyone out there that's still going, gee golly, this is fun, I have all the time in the world. No one's
Some
like
people
that.
are, I think.
Maybe maybe there are. I guess
I worry about those people.
Yeah, so just kind of go with the flow and don't feel the pressure to do something just because you feel guilty if you don't. I mean, right now it's great if you can do that, but if you feel like you can't, I say more power to you. Do whatever feels natural in that moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're all humans. We're all just trying to figure it out. And honestly, feel free to, even if we've never met before, we love talking to people. Feel free to shoot us an email with your thoughts, feelings, emotions about what you're experiencing during this time. We love to hear from people. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving us a rating and review on iTunes, and follow us at Trombone Retreat on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and our website, tromboneretreat.com. And as we said, feel free to shoot us an email at tromboneretreat@gmail.com. We really do love hearing from you. We put a lot of heart and soul into this, and it helps fuel the long editing sessions. So,
and one more thing to add to, if you
please.
if you do leave a review on the podcast, you can ask a question, and we'll answer in one of these post-interview back and forth that we're doing right now. So,
or just a topic you want us to bat around for a while.
Sure, whatever maybe. Yeah, we're definitely all ears.
Except mouthpiece questions.
Yeah, no mouthpiece questions. And no questions about euphonium.
What?
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna do a plug for the online trombone retreat. There's still time. Please go to www.tromboneretreat.com. Registration is free. It's $0 East Caribbean dollars, as we discussed. But yeah, it's going to be great. Go on the website. You'll see You'll see all the details about who's going to be there, what we're going to be offering, and it's going to be a really fun 8 days.
Hey Nick, who's going to be there? What are we offering?
Oh, I'm glad you asked, John Sebastian Vera.
We got time.
Oh yeah,
they can just fast forward if they want to.
Well, it's going to be Mr. Vera and myself, along with Brian Santero, principal trombonist in New York City Ballet, colleague. Koichiro Yamamoto, who is the principal trombonist of Seattle Symphony. Jeff D., principal bass trombone of the Pittsburgh Symphony. Dave Binder, the second trombonist of Detroit Symphony. And we're also going to have a business talk about finances with Scott Stratton, who's
finance for musicians.
Yeah, exactly. He's a trombonist and he's a CPA. He specializes in finance for musicians, dealing with taxes, how to kind of organize yourself, where to invest your money. Very useful information.
He's awesome.
Right now, yeah. He usually does this exact presentation at the trombone retreat, and it's fantastic. It's really well done and really great information. And we're going to have a movement class with Gabriel Colby.
He's a trainer and certified trainer, and he's developed all these really amazing ways to unlock your body and get your body ready for the unnatural thing we do of playing the trombone and maintaining our bodies to prevent long-term injury, getting rid of pain, just some really awesome, simple things. A lot of easy exercises he's given me that I do before every single time I play, and it makes me feel better. Who else?
Bill Mann, trombone professor at Georgia State, and a really well done presentation about talking about methods to calm your mind, calm your body before a stressful performance or an audition. Obviously, very useful for us performing artists who we're only human. We all deal with performance anxiety. So those are the specialty classes. On top of that, Brian Santero will be giving a special talk about technology and specifically how to make yourself sound good on the internet. Something very useful for today. Brian Santero spent time as an audio engineer, so he knows what he's talking about. And he's just a basic tech guru and
nerd,
an AV nerd. Yeah. But yeah, okay. So we're all going to be giving trombone master classes, and we're going to be giving performances, a trombone trio and quartet performance, and we're going to be giving a solo performance. So it should be.
Oh God, I need to practice.
Yeah, me too. It should be a really great time. We're going to have a lot of fun. Yeah, it's free. Sign up. Check out all the stuff that you want that week. It's we're really excited to be able to offer this at this time.
As always, retreat yourself.
John Sebastian Vera is my friend and I love him. He's cute and he has birthing hips. John Sebastian Vera. John Sebastian Vera is my friend. John Sebastian Vera.